Learning objectives. After completing this module, learners will be able to describe that Rig Veda was composed 3600 years ago. Define the method how Vedas were memorized and not written for several centuries. Discuss the social, political, and spiritual lives of the people during Rig Vedic era. Define how the sages offered valuable things to the god during yajnas. Explain about the causes of wars and conflicts in the Vedic society. State about the structure of megaliths and their uses. Relate about various burial processes and customs as prevailed in India. Grand Old Book of India. Rig Veda and its Suktas. There are 4 Vedas: Rig Veda, Samaveda, Yajurveda, and Atharva Veda. Rig Veda is the oldest book of India. Rig Veda was composed 3500 years ago. It includes more than 1000 hymns, which was called Suktas, means well said. These are the offerings towards various gods and goddesses. In Rig Vedas, 3 gods were praised. They were Agni, the god of fire, Indra, the warrior god, and Soma, a plant, from which a special drink was prepared. Rig Veda was written in Vedic Sanskrit, which was different from present-day Sanskrit. Mostly men sages wrote the Vedic Suktas, but few women too contributed in Vedic Suktas. Sanskrit and its contribution. Sanskrit is a language which is included in Indo-European language group. There are many other languages like English, Italian, and others alike. Many of Indian languages are the members of this family. There are other language families like Indo-Burman and Dravidian families. We can see the similarity in words in the same language group. The hymns of Rig Veda. The name of Vishwamitra, one of the well-known sages in the ancient time, was mentioned in Rig Veda. It was written in dialogue form where he was talking with 2 rivers, Beas and Satluj. During this period, those rivers were praised like goddesses. Archaeologists and historians stated that Rig Veda was written at the same point where these 2 rivers are flowing nowadays. That is the northwestern region of India. The names of Ganga and Yamuna were mentioned for once or twice in Rig Veda. People in the Vedic Age. War, chariot and horses. We came to know that sages uttered the prayers to God for children, mainly sons, horses, crops and grains, and for the blessing of victory in the wars. In the Vedic era, the wars were fought for land, cattle, crops and other wealth, and for the possession of water bodies. The rishis or sages organized yajna, where many offerings were given to God, and those were made into the fire. Those offerings included ghee, crops, and sometimes cattle too. The wealth for organizing the yajnas were obtained by defeating the enemies in the war, and the skillful warriors led the group in the wars. Vish and Jana. There are many sabha and samitis were organized in the villages where people used to assemble to discuss the political matters. Few villages in combination created one vish, and few vishes constituted one jana. The heads of janas were related with the king or rajan, who was the ruler of the region. Aryas and dashyus or dashas. In the scriptures, we find that the writers called themselves as Aryas. Aryas called those men and women as Dasyus who did not offer the valuable things to God and did not practice the yajnas. Later from this word, dasa or slave was derived. The dasas were the people who were captured in the war. They were treated as the property of the owners. Stories of burials. Megaliths. We can see the structures of megaliths as of 3000 years ago in South and Northeast India and in Kashmir. These were erected stone structures crafted by the builders in order to mark a burial site. Some of them could be seen on the surface and rest of them were created underground. Archaeological findings. In various sites, a single large boulder was seen erected in a circle of stone structure indicating the graves underneath. Many types of pots, weapons, the skeletons of horses, equipment used for war, ornaments, stone and gold were found in the burials of the rich people who were probably the chiefs of the society. Sometimes, it was found that in a single burial, more than one dead bodies were kept. It might be during different times as the bodies of dead men and women were brought into the grave through the potholes. Story of Inamgaon. Inamgaon was a post-Harappan agrarian village situated in Maharashtra. It was thought that this area was occupied in between 3600 and 2700 years ago. There many burials were found inside the houses and vessels containing food and water were placed with the dead. Through archaeological finding, we came to know that the people of Inamgaon used to grow the crops like pulses, millet and else. They had their cattle too, which they used to rear. Summary. Let us summarize what we have learned in this module. Rig Veda was one of the oldest books in the world. Vedas were not written for several centuries. It was memorized verbatim by listening from Guru to his or her disciples. People regarded the practices of yajnas in the spiritual lives in order to please the gods and goddesses. In order to capture the cattle, crops, land and the water bodies, one group would engage in fierce battle with others. The megaliths were the indication of the graves under the soil and they were some sort of vertical stone structure. The